Hey, welcome back, Veteran Nation fans. We are a little bit different than what we're normally do. This is not the structured show. This is not an all swim. It's nothing like that. We actually have a great guest who's going to be on with us tonight. A guy who I've been following him for easy 6 years on X. I've been following his analysis over all the elections uh, for those years, and he's a guy who really breaks things down in a very interesting way. He adds nicknames to a lot of the people, and just he's been involved in political campaigns before. He brings a lot of experience to the discussion, and so I'm just going to go ahead and bring him on. And I hope you enjoy him as much as I do. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Larry Schweikart. Larry, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's good to have you here. And this election is already turning out to be like none other that we've seen, at least in modern, like recent history.
Well, yeah, you don't usually get a major candidate yanked out with 2 weeks to go before the convention. In fact, the only time we've ever had anybody yanked out for any reason was when you had Thomas Eagleton taken out by George McGovern because he admitted that he'd been receiving electroshock therapy. But he was a vice presidential candidate.
Yeah, yeah. The first time is since I would say probably like it was definitely since the party boss system before we had the primaries that we have someone that was really never voted on by any of the constituents as a nominee for a major party.
Yeah, you have to go back to the smoke-filled rooms.
The old days of Tammany Hall and Boss Tweed. But it really does feel like that, doesn't it?
Well, these guys are so corrupt. I mean, I think Boss Tweed would kind of blush at what these guys are doing. He'd go, "Gee, I never thought of that stuff." But it's a new level of corruption and evil with these people. There's no other way to describe it because they're just ridiculous.
Now, do you think that the fundamentals of the race have changed?
No, I don't think the fundamentals have changed in a year. The economy sucks. Illegals are pouring across the border like crazy. The current administration wants to start a war in Ukraine or Israel or any other place. And heck, they'd start a war in the Virgin Islands if they could get away with it. They just, all these fundamentals, inflation is still incredibly high. The economy, despite all their lies, sucks for ordinary people. And if you look at the right path, wrong path, America's not doing very well right now.
And what we've seen in the last couple weeks is this narrowing of the polls. And we've seen that in the last, I would say, two, possibly even three elections, where the last month or so, pretty much since, I would say, Labor Day, the polls start to tighten. But now we're actually seeing Trump lead in several of the polls, which is something I don't think we've really seen in the previous two elections he was a part of.
Well, we saw him way ahead of Biden, and he was ahead in almost every poll against Biden. But you're right, in 16 and in 20, Trump never led in any of the major polls. Now, what we've seen here is a cluster of pollsters who aren't very good have steadily been marching their numbers up closer and closer to a Trump lead. And then they said, "This is our last poll." And it always had Harris, or as I affectionately call her, Cackles. It had Cackles up by a point to half a point. They said, "This is our last poll." Well, why did they say it's their last poll? Because they know that if they put out one more poll, they would have to show Trump ahead. So you don't ever stop polling with 2 weeks to go. Nobody does that.
I don't think, we've always gotten polls all the way up to the day of the election. I can't think of any time where a major pollster has said, "Oh, yeah, this is our last one." 2 weeks out, and I believe, tomorrow is going to be 2 weeks exactly
Hmm.
of the election. But we do have voting that's already begun. Uh,
Right.
with these pollsters, how do you think they're factoring in early voting now? Because we didn't have to, like, it's been the last several, I would say, last 20 years, but prior to that, we never had this type of early voting. How do you think the pollsters are adjusting to that?
Well, listening to what Rich Bear says about the polls and how they're structured, um, I don't think they're factoring in any of that. I don't think they're factoring in the voter registration numbers at all. Apparently, they are set in how they're going to call people, text people, contact people online, and then adjust those numbers the way they think they need to adjust them.
Mhm.
I'm getting no sense from any of these polls that they even realized that Maricopa County had gained 175,000 net voters over the Democrats in the past 8 months.
Mhm. That's we've seen it in Maricopa County, Arizona. We've also seen the registration edge in Pennsylvania significantly decline in the last 2 years. Is much of a factor do you think that'll be?
It's huge. There was one Democrat on Twitter about a week ago who was saying, "Well, the Democrats need to have a 200,000 firewall in Pennsylvania, and they'll be okay." And then, like within 24 hours, he changed it to 300,000. Then he changed it to 400,000. And then Barris came along and said, "You might as well get used to. You're going to need 800,000." And I said, "I'll see 800,000. I'll raise you another 100,000," because they have not factored in the registration changes. And you have to remember that whatever numbers we are seeing that are divided by Democrat Republican ballots, that's all we know they are, is it's a Democrat requested a ballot or Republican requested a ballot. But what we're not seeing is how many of those Democrats are voting for Trump and how many Republicans are like, Liz Clusterbomb Cheney out there voting for Harris. So my guess, and it's just a guess, is that Trump probably has a net plus 10 to plus 15 in that exchange, that there's 10 to 15% more Democrats voting for him than there are Republicans voting for Harris. Now, we then get to the undecided voters or the, independents. And the last numbers I've seen from different polls come up with 6 to 10 points in favor of Trump. So once you factor all that stuff in, these numbers have to be really, really alarming to any Democrat who knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest place where we're seeing panic right now is been Virginia, uh, a state that I don't think anyone was expecting really to be competitive. Like maybe it would get within 5 points, but I'm seeing a lot of people talking about the early vote in Virginia. Can you talk a little bit about what you see there?
Yep, that's exactly right. And today it was announced that Harris is moving more money into Virginia. Last week it was announced that she'd pulled all her ads from Nevada and Wisconsin to put them in Pennsylvania. I mean, there she's surely losing. So I don't, like I said, this is a totally incompetent bunch. This is not the well-oiled Obama machine of 2008, and it's not even the thoroughly corrupt vote-stealing machine of 2020 for Biden. This is a bunch of idiots, boobs, running these campaigns, and they don't have a direction. They don't seem to have a strategy. They're reacting rather than acting. And I think Virginia now is probably close to about 5 points today. If it gets within 2 points, Trump can steal Virginia.
Yeah, I've told people several times, you never, with these elections, they can swing very quickly if you're not ready for it. I've seen, I'm originally from Ohio, live in California now, but in Ohio, I've seen elections where, you thought so and so was just way out ahead. And then the day prior, you start seeing it swing the other way when people really start making up their minds. Do you think that's still happens, people who wait to the last minute to decide?
Well, you're absolutely right. Let's look at 1980. Okay, in 1980, Reagan led in almost all the polls up until about this time in October. And then Dick Wirthlin came to him and he said, Mr. President, or Governor, he called him, said, Governor, we got a problem. You now are trailing Carter in this one poll. I think you need to do the debate. And that's the only reason Reagan did that famous debate with Carter, is because Wirthlin told him he needed to do it. Well, what happened? Reagan went from a very slight apparent lead to a blowout. It wasn't a landslide, but it was so bad that Carter called him before the polls had even closed in California and conceded.
Mm. That's I do recall that that debate. Reagan was a great debater. Had a several very big debate moments in his career, and we did see some interesting debates this year. And one thing I always talk about with debates is I don't believe you can ever really win a debate. I think you can always lose a debate, and I think that's kind of what we saw. Uh, how did you see the debates? We only had two. Well, we did have three, but one had Biden. But with Harris and Waltz and Trump and Vance, how did you see the debates?
Well, for a moment, you mentioned Reagan in his debates. Very few people know that Reagan debated Bobby Kennedy over the Vietnam War in I think it was 68, in front of a college setting, or a bunch of Utes, and so totally defeated him that Bobby was angry when he came off stage and told his campaign manager, "Don't you ever set me up with another debate with that guy again." Now, in these debates, the first one, and there's a question I think we'll find the answer to down the road in the next couple of years, was Biden's set up for that first debate failure? Was he put out there so that they could get rid of him? Because it's pretty clear that the polls for Biden were deadly accurate. They had him losing Maine. They had him close to losing, New Jersey. And so the question is, were they deliberately trying to unload him? And I will get to your question on the debates themselves. But my hypothesis has been that, again, they were so screwed up. They were so incompetent. They, a year ago, planned lawfare. And they thought that lawfare would remove Trump from the campaign, force him to drop out, and that he would be replaced either by DeSantis or by Haley, and that they were sure they could destroy either DeSantis or Haley very, very easily. And I happen to agree with that view. So they did not make long-term plans to steal it, because they really didn't think they had to. They thought all it would take would be to get rid of Trump. So they did not take an opportunity in 2023 to remove Biden when they could have done so smoothly and in an orderly fashion, drawn up their argument and presented to him as to why he needed to leave, and so on and so forth. Instead, they waited until it was really too late. Yeah, they got rid of him, but under such horrific circumstances that it pretty well finished Harris as well. So they set him up for that debate. And Trump just destroyed him without being mean, which was very good for Trump. My inclination would have been to pound him like a bag of sand, but nevertheless, but not Trump. And it allowed Biden, or as I affectionately call him, Rutabaga, to show what an incompetent boob he really is and how demented he was. And that finished him. So then you had the debate with Harris. And in the first debate, people wanted to see, is Biden as mentally deficient as everybody thinks he is? And they all said, yep, he's senile, he's got Alzheimer's, he's bad. In the second debate, they wanted to see if Harris had any brain power at all, if she could muster any organized arguments, if she could do anything except Trump. And she couldn't. Trump did not need a knockout in that debate the way he he got the knockout against Biden. All he had to do in that debate was not let himself be knocked out. And while he could have possibly done better as a debater, he achieved 100% of his goal, which was to allow her to expose herself in a way that she looked like a fool. So then you come to the third one, and then that was not even a contest at all. J.D. Vance mopped the floor with Tampon Timmy. And the only thing that was happening there was that they managed to maintain a somewhat higher level of debate, but it still didn't help the Democrats. Again, they needed a knockout. And so they went into three straight debates really needing to prove something, and they didn't prove what they needed to in any of the three.
And everyone was very much focused on Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. And there's other states in there that, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, that people have talked about. But I think what we're starting to see as we're seeing the separation, I think we're starting to see Arizona pull away, Georgia pull away from her. And it's still those three states, but it seems like she's kind of giving up on a couple of them. Like you said, she moved money away from Wisconsin and Nevada.
Yeah.
Do you think they're kind of giving up on those states as well?
Well, again, for a year, I have said that North Carolina is not competitive. It is not a swing state. Trump won it 2 times when Democrats had almost double the current voter registration edge they have now. How is it supposed to suddenly be a swing state when Republicans have cut the edge down to just about 100,000, and in which it's a much more Trumpy year in terms of the issues than it was in 2020. So I think that they made a mistake by even thinking that Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina were swing states at all.
Mhm.
The only remaining problem is, it's not really a big problem if you know how to kind of adjust for it, but Michigan and Wisconsin do not register by party. And as a result, it's harder to do the same kind of analysis there that you do with Arizona, North Carolina, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania. And so you have to use a lot of other factors there. And this is where Barris really stands out in his polling, is because he knows the backwater parts of Wisconsin, where I taught for a year. I taught at University of Wisconsin Richland Center. It was sort of a junior college, and it was so small, it was 217 students. I had lectured to students at Santa Barbara, 800 people classes. But the whole campus, there was 217. They made me the assistant men's basketball coach. So I have been an assistant men's NCAA basketball coach for a Division III school. So he knows the backwater parts of Wisconsin, like Richland Center and Eau Claire and all these little burgs back there. And they did not turn out for the Supreme Court race, 2 years ago. A big loss there. That was a big loss because it allowed the Democrats to get the Supreme Court there. But Barris is convinced that Trump is ahead by at least 1 in Wisconsin. I always go back to this. Whatever you're polling, add 2.1 to Trump, because he underpolls by 2.1 in every single race. So by that measure, he's probably up 2 in Wisconsin and 2 in Michigan. The last three out of the last 4 polls in Michigan had him up. And those 3 were all local pollsters. So I tend to take them a little more value and credibility than somebody like YouGov.
I do appreciate that, because I do enjoy Barris's commentary. I do watch his People's Pundit show. I also like Joseph Shepard. I like his analysis as well, and I know you two have traded tweets back and forth in the past. And I do want the fans of the show, if you're watching right now, I want you all to know you can leave a question for Larry in the comments. I will put those on the screen if you have any. And we are currently broadcasted on X, YouTube, and Facebook. And the only one I can't get to is Rumble. So if you're watching on Rumble, go to the others if you want to submit a question. I do want to talk a little bit about, I'm seeing early voting numbers in Nevada. and
Mhm.
Nevada's very close. The aggregates have Harris with a very slight edge, but with the early voting now, Clark County is the biggest county. It's Las Vegas. It's where the most votes are. It's you win Clark County, you're probably going to win the state. But it's from what I'm seeing, the early voting is nothing like the padded firewall that Democrats have had in the past.
You're absolutely right. In 2020, Biden won. You always have to put that in quotation marks by 33,000, and the Democrats had a registration edge of 40,000 at that time. Their registration edge now is down to 16,000. They had a big firewall going into 2020, and it was about again about 40,000 firewall early votes. Today they're down to just under 1,700. So they're down over 30,000 from where they were in 2020. And it's bad for Democrats when Ralston, who is the big stat cheerleader out there for Nevada, is telling Democrats they better buckle up because it's going to be really close. Well, he's saying it's close means Trump's probably going to win. Again, we get back to these two ratios, which is the number of Democrat voters who are going to vote for Trump versus the number of Harris voters who will. Harris voters will vote for Trump versus the number of Trump voters who vote for Harris. And I think Trump probably has at least a 10-point edge in that. And then again, the independents. So when you factor those in, I think that Nevada will be close. But my cohort on election night on Decision 2024, Decision USA Online, Seth Keshel, he has Trump winning Nevada by about 40,000 votes.
Which I do want to put that up. So this is when he's talking about Decision USA 2024. This is them right here, and I do have.
We'll be on the air. We'll be on the air from 6 Arizona time until midnight Arizona time.
And I do have your other links in the ticker at the bottom as well. Mm-hmm. So I just want everybody to know that. I did get a question from Patriot 911 News. They want to know AI is obviously a tool coming in there. Do you think it's helping with polling, and how useful do you think this will be in campaigns?
Well, AI is like any other computer, garbage in, garbage out. You get out of AI what you were able to program into it. So if you believe that the electorate is a +3 Democrat electorate, you're going to get crap out, because at worst it's a +R1 electorate, maybe a +3. And with leaners, we had Gallup a week ago saying it was a +7 electorate. I don't believe that, but I think it could be a +3 Republican electorate. So it's not. It's not the horsepower of the engine that counts; it's the driver.
And that's one thing I really do enjoy listening to Barris talk about, when he talks about how they're inferring who the electorate is going to be. And he always talks about, afterwards you get the voter file, you can pay the state and get, okay, these are the people who voted, all the demographics, and you can try to do that. But every election is different from the previous election. How much is that going to be? We do have this question. Larry, do you think they tried to get rid of Trump because he was a threat to others?
Well, yeah, he's a threat to others. He's a threat to the whole Democrat Party and the whole deep state and the whole corrupt bunch of them. Absolutely. They didn't try to get rid of Ron DeSantis. They're not afraid of Lindsey Graham. They're not afraid of Brian Kemp. They're afraid of Trump, because if he sets his mind to it, and appears now with J.D. Vance, Bobby Kennedy, Elon Musk, that he's building a team that is going to take this government apart at the seams. And let's hope he can do so in about 3 years, because then he'll start to lose some of his juice after 3 years.
That was one thing I said when in 2020, after Trump lost, I said he's kind of figured out who the snakes are in the Republican Party, who are the people that were a part of his administration that turned their backs on him. And I said, if he ever gets back in, he's going to know who not to trust and who to trust, who had his back when push came to shove. And I think he's learned quite a bit.
Well, you can see that by who he's surrounding himself with here this time. Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk. You don't see any of the Lindsey Grahams or the Mitch McConnells or any of those people. Nikki Haley, or as I lovingly call her, Knick Knack Paddywhack, give a yucca bomb. You don't see any of those people anywhere close to Trump, and I think he's really building a powerful team. I tell people it's great to pray for President Trump, but you also better pray that God gives him 50 mighty men and women to come in and take this country apart and build it back up.
And that's actually leads to our next question. Copperwise on YouTube asks, can you ask Larry how he feels polling favors Trump will affect the down ballot races in those key states?
Well, throughout this cycle, at least going back 6 months, Trump has been polling a good 5 to 6 points ahead of almost any of the senatorial candidates, whether it was Kerry Lake, Bernie Moreno, McCormick, Sheehy. Well, that changed about 3 months ago. You started to see the first one was Sheehy, who pulled ahead of Tester, and I think she's a lock now. I think he's our second pickup in the Senate. Justice out of West Virginia is our first. Then the next one, so, to my surprise, you're from Ohio, but was Moreno. He came on really fast. And I think now that the Democrats are pretty well concluding that Sherrod Brown has lost that seat and that Moreno is going to win that one. Well, today we now see that McCormick has suddenly got a lead in Pennsylvania. I think Kerry Lake's back 3 or 4. But Trump, if Trump wins Arizona by 4 or 5, he can pull Kerry Lake over. They are now concerned about, of all things, New Mexico and the Senate race in New Mexico. That was not on my dance card, I'll tell you what. But Heinrich now is they're thinking he may be in trouble. So for sure, I think for sure that the Republicans will end up 53-47 at worst, and they could end up 55-45 or even 56-44 in the Senate. To me, all you need is 53, because 53 and JD, that could be an election campaign thing, right? 53 and JD, that gives you a cushion over Susan Tom Collins and Murkowski and whatever idiot Utah sends to replace Minion Romney there. So you now got the 3 votes to offset those 3 idiots, and then JD's the tiebreaker. So the Democrats cannot rely anymore on Republicans to do their dirty work for them.
And there's always one shocker race in the Senate. Every election, there's one that is tight or someone wins who was not expected. And I think there's a couple potential ones. I think you have Hung Kao in Virginia, and with what we're seeing out of Virginia, if that ends up being a race with Trump, he could pull him across. I think in Michigan, I think Mike Rogers has a significant chance. There's several of these races that people are like, it leans Democrat, that I think could absolutely end up, as a flipped seat. And every flipped seat means the Democrats have to then flip 2 to undo it. And
right.
That's what's interesting about the balance of power. And
well, look at Wisconsin there. 3 or 4 weeks ago, Baldwin's camp came out and said, "Hey, we're in trouble." And this guy, I don't know if you say his name, Hovid or Hovid, however you say his name, he's now either tied or down 2 to her. Again, a Trump 2.3-point win is going to pull him in. I don't know. My kind of surprise has always been Larry Hulk Hogan out there in Maryland. Just because he was a popular governor, you can't ever put that past people. I know the numbers are against them, but if it's a Trump, I hate to use the term landslide, because you cannot have a landslide in this current mix where you have California, Illinois, and New York totaling 100 electoral votes, right? It's just not possible. But in this current mix, this Trump heavy mix, I think that Hogan may have a shot.
That's one thing with the polls. They were showing polls of New York of Trump doing better than what he did in 2020. Polls of here of California, where I am, of him doing better than 2020, but yet then still saying, but nationally, she's got this 4-point lead. It really just seemed, and when you went into the crosstabs, there would always be really weird things happening. And I know Barris likes to call it overrepresentation, not oversampling, and he's very good on that. But did you see those same things? And do you think it's people trying to game the system?
Well, we've seen for over a year that whatever state we were looking at, first of all, the Republican registrations were moving dramatically, even in places like Maryland, even in places like Connecticut, New Hampshire, you were seeing Republicans gaining in net registrations. And then when you looked at the polls in New York, California, New Jersey, again, they had all moved anywhere from 5 to 15 points in Trump's direction. The last poll I saw out of California, he was down, I don't know, 24 points, but that was still 5 points better than in 2020. And there were 3 polls out of New York that had him down as little as 6. And one was 15, which I would guess is probably closer. But all those are 15 points closer than they were in 2020. When you see this across the board, and yet you come back and you say nationally, oh, Harris is up too, that's just nonsense.
Yeah, it's just a lot of the stuff just wasn't making sense, and you still see a couple of these people who they're kind of the same players. They do this same thing every time, but there's been some good stories. Like I want to say, I know I'm going to get his name right. Lichtenberg, the guy with the 13 keys. Lichtman. There you go. Him and then Nate Silver. They started going at it about who was more accurate, and I was just like, this has been a doozy. I've never seen anything like that.
Well, Lichtman has these keys, and the problem with his keys is they demand a tremendous amount of interpretation. And for example, is the economy good? Well, if you're part of the 1%, the economy is awesome. If you're not part of the 1%, the economy sucks for most people. Things like that in terms of how you're going to define his keys. One of them was there a contested primary? And he says, well, no, there wasn't for. Well, no, there wasn't for Biden. He was removed, for Pete's sake. I mean, they're just silly kind of keys, if you want to use that term.
One thing that just my observation in my short time, of a voting member of the public, that I've noticed is when being an incumbent is a very big edge. And that can mean you can be polling under 50. But from what I've noticed, if you get to 47, that's kind of like the point. If you get to 47, of all the undecideds and people left, you still have enough to get over that 50%, assuming there's no third party siphoning off any significant support. When you add a third party, all bets are off. But that's one thing I've kind of noticed is you get to that 47 mark, you got pretty much a 50-50 shot. But as I've been watching a lot of these incumbent senators, I rely on Real Clear Politics, their aggregate for polling. There's a lot of people out there, a lot of incumbents who have not hit that magical 47%, in my opinion. Do you see things the same way, or do you have a different take on it?
No, that's right. Because first of all, for the incumbent, in this case, it would be Harris. She hasn't yet figured out if she's trying to latch herself to Biden's policies or distance herself from his policies. And as a result, she's been totally incoherent and incompetent. Again, being an incumbent only helps if you can take aspects of your record. You don't even need all your record, just parts of it, and say, I did this. I've been really good in this area, and just kind of shush the stuff from areas where you weren't so good, right? But these Democrat senators can't do that. Why? Because Biden was so incompetent, he couldn't pass anything that mattered to anybody except more and more money to Ukraine. And
Mhm.
that's not flying with anybody. I mean, even a lot of the Democrats are kind of upset with that. So your advantages of incumbency don't matter very much if you don't know how to use them.
Yeah, and normally there's name recognition for like your smaller races. Trump obviously doesn't have to worry about name recognition. Everyone knows who he is. Um, and I'm out here in Southern California. I'm not far from Palm Springs. Last week we had Trump come out here to Coachella. I did a live stream from the parking lot there, and it was just a crazy atmosphere. But when people have asked about that, I believe that was about one thing. That rally was about one thing, and that was the United States House and some of these also California state races. Do
Mhm.
you agree with that?
Yeah. Um, he's not going to win California, but I think it's on his mind that he wants to win the popular vote for a lot of reasons. My good friend Zen Master up there, who's my anonymous court source, he disagrees with me on this, but I think the popular vote is very important. Number one, it takes away the thing. Well, we need to get rid of the electoral college, and as soon as you see Republicans winning the popular vote, that argument's going to go away entirely. It's just like the early voting argument. You watch what happens if Republicans win or significantly make inroads with the early vote. You're going to start to see Democrats talking about how we need to get back to election day, 1 day voting. You watch. First time Republicans overwhelmingly win early voting, Democrats are going to be screeching to take it back to election day. By the way, I was out at Palm Springs to the Republican Women's Club back in, I think it was July. It was a great talk. We had a packed house. It was a wonderful thing at the hotel there. I cannot remember the name of it. Anyway, it was fun.
Uh, yeah, that's this is a Republican part of California. There aren't a lot of them, but Orange County used to be very Republican. Now it's kind of been a little bit more purple, a little bit more of a swing area. And California has a lot of issues. And I don't know if you look too much into the propositions that they put up, but I think I actually filled out my ballot today. And as I was going through it, I hadn't noticed quite yet. I don't think these propositions that they put up are going to help Democrat turnout at all. But I think it's really going to help Republican turnout in California.
Well, the Democrat Party is getting woker and woker, crazier and crazier, more and more progressive. And if you read the sensible Democrats like Rui Teixeira and Mark Penn and Mark Halperin, and even James Carville when he's on his meds, um, you get a sense that they are terrified of where this party is going. And that's why I keep saying I think the realignment is so staggering that assuming Trump wins, and you look at a J.D. Vance being the kind of natural heir apparent there, in 2030 there's a new redistricting and census, and they stand to lose another flat out 8 to 10 seats in that. But again, my co-host on Decision USA Online, Seth Keshel, he's done some work on the last census, and he claims that they basically stole 16 to 20 electoral votes from the red states in that census. So if we even get a remotely fairer census, we could see another 20 electoral votes go over to Republicans, and Democrats would never win the electoral college again. I mean, they're looking at being shut out here for 40 or 50 years if they don't right their ship quickly, but they're not listening to anybody telling them, you better fix this woke stuff. They just don't want to hear it.
That's really interesting because I remember in 2008 when Obama won, they were talking about this emerging Democrat majority. Republicans were probably never going to win a national election again. And, they were claiming it all because of the demographics that,
Right.
the Obama coalition. And we've seen that just disintegrate after Obama left office. So, yeah, it's quite interesting that you say that because, yeah, the red states are, from the census, are gaining more and more.
Well, you look at that coalition that Obama had, and remember after 2012 with Minion Romney, the Republicans did a soul searching, and they published some document that said, "Oh, we have to attract more Hispanics, we have to attract more young people, more blacks," and who did that? Well, it was Donald Trump. And as soon as he started doing it, all they do is diss him. Well, but we don't want those people. But that's exactly the people you want. That's exactly the people you need. And so Trump has successfully, if you want to use this term, hijacked the Obama coalition of the emergent, or whatever he called it, right? Coalition of the ascending, that kind of garbage. And Trump has taken them over. And the Democrats may not, the only issue they have at all on their side going for them with those groups, with some of those groups, is abortion. And even there, they don't know when to stop. And like here in Arizona, we have a proposition to allow unlimited abortion up to, birth. There's going to be pushback on that. We already have abortion in the first trimester here. So you're going to make people say, look, I'm on your side, but you're crazy now, and I can't stand with you anymore. It's basically what Robert F. Kennedy did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because, yeah, you're seeing these issues pop up. And, I always said the biggest problem that the Democrats had was actually in 2020 when they really started mobilizing the United States parents, when they started going to these schools and pushing a more woke agenda, with, transgenderism, DEI, critical race theory. And you started seeing people showing up to their local school boards. And I said, this is going to backfire, because when you start waking up these parents and they start becoming more politically active, they don't like their kids being messed with at all. And I said, it's going to shake up both parties. And I said, the what people don't understand is when it comes to your state party, the power is in your local precincts. The people who go on these committees and become your local precinct chair, who become your electoral slate, because those are the ones who then decide who's going to get that primary money and who's going to get the backing. And when you start getting these people to run for the school board and stuff like that, it doesn't take long before they start being active in other parts of the party. And I think we're starting to see that, at least in the Republican Party, kind of flush out with Trump really taking over the Republican Party.
Right. I mean, two directions to go with that. First is I am a homeschool curriculum provider. My Wild World of History website, I have a homeschool history curriculum for U.S. history and for world history. I teach Patriots history of the United States in video, and I go to all the homeschool conventions. And as a result, I've seen homeschooling grow from about 5% of the population to maybe 10%. And some think it may be as high as 20%. It all kind of depends on how you measure who is a homeschooler, because the public schools want the data for the money. So they will claim someone as a student who is a homeschooler, but who attends band class or certain art classes or music classes or sports at a public school. They will claim that student. And so I had one guy who is a major homeschool convention provider, and he said, no, really, he says the number of homeschoolers is about 20 million in this country. So there's more and more people saying we can't trust the public schools at all. We just have to get out. I see it here in Phoenix in the papers. They're whining all the time about the decline in student numbers because COVID, of course, showed a lot of parents what was really going on at school when they looked over their kid's shoulder and saw what they were doing there. So the other thing about the parents getting involved, though, is we saw Youngkin, for example, come to victory largely because of the school issues. And obviously, I'm totally behind that. I'm behind what DeSantis is trying to do in Florida. But I need to caution people that true change isn't going to come from above. It never comes from above. You have to institute it from below so that your teachers that are getting hired there, your people who are working in the classrooms, and that they don't dare start bringing in transoids to do story hour in front of the kiddies. I mean, they wouldn't dare. They would just lose their job. You need to restore that from the bottom. And so I support these top-down efforts, but that's a Band-Aid. The real healing has to come from below.
Absolutely. And that's, I did put your book up here. I'll put it back up again for the A Patriot's History of the United States, 15th anniversary edition. And you're a New York Times bestseller, so congratulations on that.
We're in our 43rd printing.
Very nice. That's I know I could bring you back and just pick your brain about that after the election, because I think it's really fascinating watching what's happening with our schools, and I'm seeing it here in my area. We do have a question here that I think it, they're aiming this towards Arizona, but I think there's a lot of states this could apply to, and it's, should Arizona residents be concerned with all the people pouring in from California? Will they turn to a permanent blue state?
Well, about 5 or 6 years ago, I was concerned about that. And Barris did some polling, and he was finding that the people who came into Arizona from about 2010, 2018 or so were, in fact, Democrats, blue Californians. But then he noticed that the younger, I say younger, it doesn't mean younger in age, but the newer Arizonians coming from California were actually much more conservative and probably reflected a lot of the escapees who were trying to flee California's regulations. All I can say is if you look at the voter registration numbers, Maricopa County has added, we now have a net 176,600 more R's than D's. The whole state is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 300,000 R plus. So these ain't Democrats coming in, or if they were Democrats, they've changed their mind since then. You should be more concerned about Colorado, because Colorado went from being an R+1 state around 2014 to being a D+2 or 3 state now. And it's, when I mention all those other statistics about the voter registration, Colorado is the one state that isn't going that way. It's not moving D much more anymore, but it's not yet turned the corner.
I live in San Bernardino County, which is the biggest county in the United States. It's bigger than the state of Rhode Island, and it shares a border with Arizona. And what I have seen in the last 8 years is lots of people, Republicans, leaving California for Arizona on one issue and one issue alone, and that is gun rights.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm in a military town. A lot of veterans who stay around here or who have stayed around for years are like, no, I don't like the new California gun laws. It's going to take time for for these to be flushed out in the court, and in the meantime, I'm just not going to deal with it. And they left to Arizona and Nevada. Now, for the Democrats who've left, I've noticed they have gone to Colorado. A lot have gone to Oregon, and then there's this pocket of people who've left not for Texas, but Austin, Texas. I've noticed.
Yes.
They don't want to go any other part of Texas, just to Austin.
They want to replicate all of their bad policies in another state without all the effects of the bad policies that they put into place, which is just insane. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. I went to grad school at Cal Santa Barbara, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful place. 80s, I used to love to come over to California. I mean, we just so look forward to that. And my rock band basically lived on Sunset. We lived at the Tropicana Motel on Sunset Boulevard, along with the drummer from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and all sorts of other people. We played the Troubadour there, and the Who came and sat through our set at the Troubadour, and a very drunk Pete Townsend slapped me on the back when we were done. Said, "Hey, good show, Watt." So I used to love California, but the last few times I've been back, I can't wait to get out because it's just homeless and drug people and high prices. You know, I'll look at the price of gas at Indio and go, can I get across the border? Can I still make it across the border to the gas station there?
And Indio is not even the highest price here. I'm not far from Indio, but the more you head into LA, that you see the prices go up and up and up. Thankfully, Costco and some of the Indian casinos kind of help keep it down. But I'm on my GPS, like, okay, where's the nearest one? um, Yoda FD20 on YouTube wants to know: do you think independents will vote for Trump?
Like I say, we have mixed evidence. I've seen Trump not losing anywhere, but I've seen him winning independents by 4 and all the way up to 10. So I don't know how he's tracking. I've had a question into Rich Barris for 2 or 3 days, and we haven't touched base yet. But I think Trump will win independents by some margin. I can't tell you what margin it is.
Okay. And then if you have a question wherever you're watching other than Rumble, please just type your question. We'll try to get to everyone's questions. But the one thing I do want to ask about, we're now in these final 2 weeks. This is normally the time where we see an October surprise. Do you think we'll see one? And then conversely, do you think it's actually possible to do some type of October surprise to hurt Trump?
I think first of all, I don't think they planned it. Like I said, I think they're so incompetent that they really thought lawfare would just handle all their problems. And then once that didn't, and they couldn't believe that it didn't, they kept telling themselves that surely they're going to put it, just surely, and I knew last December, thanks to Zen Master, he says, hey, Trump's not going to be going to trial in any of these except maybe the New York in the coming year. It's just not.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't understand that. A couple of their legal beagles did, like Tribe and a couple of those other people, but most of them didn't understand that they totally failed with lawfare. And so I don't think that they have planned an October surprise. I don't think they can cobble one together quickly enough. The only things left would be the things that are so incredibly dangerous, like starting a war with Iran, that could lead to incredibly horrific circumstances. I think even they don't want to do something like that. So I really don't think there's going to be an October surprise. We're down to, as you say, 2 weeks left, and much of the country has voted already. Not a majority yet, but much has already voted.
I think it's hard to come up with one with someone like Trump at this point because he's so well known and they've thrown so many things at him and nothing really could stick.
You tried to put him in jail. You tried to kill him. And what is there after that?
Yeah, there's really been some extremes. And then the other thing I want to ask you about is the House races. We're now starting to get these polls in. Normally, those are the last ones that we get before the election day, and we're starting to see these House races. People are starting to make up their minds. How do you see the U.S. House going?
Well, I never thought that even with a big Trump landslide, because all races are local, I never thought we'd see a huge House expansion. But I never thought we'd lose a House. I think it'll be 5 to 10 net gain, something like that. These local candidates, it's so important how good you are locally and how well you know the people. And so, we're not going to lose the House, but you're not going to get a 2/3 majority either.
This one here is actually more of a comment, but I do think it's important. In regards to the Electoral College, a few years ago, my older sister was telling me we need to abolish the Electoral College. She had no idea what it does for smaller states. And I do want to piggyback on that because there's this initiative out there called the National Popular Vote. And it's not even an amendment. It's just a bill that or a law that they want to get passed in all these states that whoever wins the popular vote, those states will be forced to give the electoral college votes to that individual. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with that,
Yep.
but I'd like to have a little bit of a discussion on the electoral college.
Well, so first of all, that really came about with this compact of 16 states, including Illinois, California, a couple of others, Colorado, that they would award their votes to whoever won the national popular vote. However, that doesn't bind anybody until you get to 270 electoral votes when it matters. So back to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court will not take up a hypothetical case. They're not going to look at this popular vote law mandate, however they want to phrase it, until or unless there is an election in which they actually do that and somebody is actually hurt by it. And then they would step in. It is totally unconstitutional. I don't think it would last 5 minutes before any kind of Supreme Court. And by the way, I don't know if people thought about this, but it's entirely possible that Trump could get 2, maybe even 3 more Supreme Court selections in his next term. I'm pretty sure Thomas will retire when Trump is reelected, so you can put a younger guy in there for him. Kagan has been, the wise Latina has been fairly sick with diabetes, and it would not surprise me. There was talk earlier, about 4 months ago, of trying to get her to step down because they were afraid Trump would win and she would be forced down because of her health, and then you'd have another Ginsburg situation. And something in the back of my mind has just kept telling me that Roberts is going to step down for some reason. I don't know why, but I think it'd be really funny and particularly stick the knife into Democrats to have Trump have like 6 of the picks on the Supreme Court.
I could see Roberts doing that because I don't think he likes the politics of it. I think that's the thing that turns him off the most. I do have a question here from Patriot 911 News. Big fan of the show and your guest. Let me ask a question. I think you're very knowledgeable, but what effect does smudging the results have to play in all of this by your estimation?
What do you mean? I'd have to know what you mean by smudging the results.
So, yeah, if you could do a follow up, Patriot 911 on that, and we'll try to get you an answer here. And I do have another question. Do you think they'll try to unalive Trump again if he wins?
Unalive him.
We got to be careful with the YouTube algorithm; it censors us.
Yeah, I get it. So again, I think there are still a few sensible people inside the Democrat Party that realize that they are very much teetering on a cliff, and that if they don't realign the party with what voters really want, with their economic concerns, foreign wars, with the crazy stuff on even Cuban. Mark Cuban had to step back from immigration today. If they don't get off of these nut job positions, there won't be a Democrat Party left. So I think there will be elements of the Democratic Party that will try as hard as they can to step on and stifle any Antifa BLM kind of rioting and looting. If Trump has a halfway decent attorney general, you'll never get close to another Russia hoax in your life. He just squashed that instantly, which is what Sessions should have done. Sessions has been the most destructive single cabinet pick in recent history by anybody. He allowed BLM, he allowed Antifa, he allowed the sanctuary cities, he allowed all that stuff. And I spoke to Sessions for an hour in October. Maybe it was November after Trump won, and he was on the transition team. We talked for a long, long time. I thought this guy's going to be really good, and he turned out to be so useless and lame. I swear. So anyway, back to the Democrats. I think that they're going to be limited in what they can try to do because there's parts of the party that are seeing the party cannot survive 4 more years of Russia hoax, Antifa, BLM, that kind of stuff. It just can't. It'll be such a minority party that it'll cease to exist. And I think there's people over there who know that.
And we did get a clarification on smudging.
Okay.
They said that cheating, whether that be by hand count or manipulation of the voting machines, anything like that, where it's just there's a little bit of wiggle room, and they're going to just kind of play with it.
Well, understand that cheating in American politics is absolutely nothing new. And we started the show with this. You know, the tweet ring would be right at home with the modern day Democrat Party. The Republicans cheated in the election of 1877. They ruled the 3 states electoral counts were wrong, and they replaced them with better electors, not fake electors, just different, better electors, right? No, I don't think they can do anything. I think for our side we need to be aware of it, but for us to harp on it and just doom on it like so many people do is extremely damaging. I mean, if you really believe that they're, quote, just going to steal it, why are you even bothering to vote?
Yeah.
Why do you get out of bed in the morning if they're just going to steal it, right? So we need to get into a more aggressive mentality that we're going to crush them, we're going to defeat them. And my favorite scene is the scene in Gettysburg where Jeff Daniels, as Colonel Chamberlain, they're out of ammunition, they can't retreat, so he says, "Bayonets!"
So this one we did talk a little bit earlier.
Yep.
What do you think the chances are of the Republicans keeping both the House and the Senate?
100%.
Interesting. Very interesting. I do want to, because I know we've taken up a lot of your time, I do want to get to your plugs here. So let me go ahead and I'll put up another one of your books that you've written. And if you could tell the audience a little bit about them.
Well, Patriots History Globalism is the most recent book, came out back in February, and I look at the history of globalism, and most importantly, toward the end, I look at its decline. It is in decline. We have them on the run. We need to give them a push. I think there's a lot of good information in there about how we have them on the run, and Steve Bannon did a foreword for that.
Oh, very nice. And then this was the other one that you have.
How Trump Won is the one I wrote before the election in 2016. It was done by October, and I couldn't get a publisher. In it, and you can look at the footnotes, I have extensive footnotes. I said in multiple public forums that Trump would win the election with between 300 and 320 electoral votes, and the final was 304. Again, this is when nobody even thought he would win.
And then in the ticker, for those folks watching, I do have, they're about ready to come up, I do have your Wild World of History and Wild World of Politics. If you could
right. The Wild World of Politics is where I do almost all of my political commentary. I have something called The Insider, where I do commentary 3 days a week. Plus, I do ongoing video lessons with a political tent, such as Integrity with Winston Churchill, about 20 lessons on the life of Winston Churchill. Our current Integrity series just started, is on Billy Graham. So I think they'll find that interesting. People are saying I didn't answer a question. I did so answer it. No, they're not going to try to, Trump again. I don't think so. I think there's people inside the party that realize they already went too far, and that if the party is going to survive, they can't keep doing this stuff.
And I also don't think they want Vance. And I always said it was doing, any attempt on Trump was going to be a mistake, because I think it actually would do kind of a Kennedy situation where there's enough Trump family members who I think are inclined politically that if something like that were to happen, they would absolutely get involved in politics. And now you've just created a dynasty.
Yeah, but we've got so many great people out there with Vivek, with Vance. I even thought Bobby Kennedy, he's too old, but I thought he might even lurch further to the right. and try to make a play for the Republican nomination. And yes, I did give a prediction. Trump will win the election with at least 312 electoral votes. His ceiling is 340.
And I don't want to take up any more of your time. But if there's anything else you'd like to bring up, we've hit on all the things I wanted to talk about. So, is there anything else you want to discuss?
Just follow me on Twitter. They took my account of 106,000 for some unknown reason. And so I built it back up to about 14,000, but it's a long way from where it was. I'm at Larry, SCHWE 94560. Larry, SCHWE 94560.
Here, I'll actually put it up so people can take a look, so then they know what your account looks like. So that's him right there.
And join us on election night at Decision USA Online. We got great guests lined up. Everybody from actor Nick Searcy to Carrie Lake to General Mike Flynn. We got great people coming in, and Seth Keshel is going to be doing all the analysis. And I just think it's going to be a great night.
I think it'll be very, very interesting, and that's all I can ever ask for, is that it's an interesting night. So I do want to extend to you an open invite. I thank you so much for coming on tonight. If you ever want to come back on again, all you have to do is just say, "Hey, Skipper, I'd like to be back on. We'd love to have you on." The audience, they were asking lots of questions, really seemed to enjoy you as a guest. And as I'm looking, we have a lot of people on Twitter, but not many questions from Twitter. So maybe all of them are watching on the new Twitter app.
I'll get them all in direct messages, believe me.
Oh, I'm definitely sure you will. But thank you again for joining us. And I've been following you for years. I'm going to keep following you. Everyone, if you have an X account, go on there and follow Larry. I had never really checked out your web pages before today, so I'm going to start being up on those as well.
Good. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And for everyone here who submitted questions, thank you so much. Again, I want to thank Larry for being here. And as usual, thank you for being worth serving.